Hey everyone, and welcome to another Hungover podcast brought to you by Hungover Gaming. My name is Yvonne, and this is the 14th episode, and over there we have...
Julien!
There we go.
To the podcast.
And you can, of course, grab this podcast in a multitude of places, including iTunes, SoundCloud, and seeing our beautiful faces on YouTube. And, of course... we'll introduce the topic right before we get into some things that we've consumed this week and what we drank. But the topic of this podcast is exploring the unexplored. Are game settings going to be retreaded, or will we find new spaces for games to go into? So,
a good question, Yvonne.
Thanks. I'm really excited about this topic because we've stayed away from a lot of gaming-focused things besides the intro between 15 and 20 minutes as we usually do. And I'm really excited to get into an actual gaming topic this week. So, Julien.
Yes?
What media have you consumed? And a little brief note, this is a shorter interim between last recording and this recording, so a little bit less. So we're recording on Wednesday.
Oh, yes, of course. We're recording on May the 10th instead of the coming Sunday, which is the 14th, because it is Mother's Day and we both have moms and we love them very much, so we're not going to record a podcast and we're both going to go hang out with them. I assume that's what you're doing.
Sure.
Alright, sure, that's what I'm doing, Julien. I'm going to take my mom out to a nice winery tour.
Ooh.
Yes, I am.
Some wine tasting?
Yes, wine tasting is what I shall do.
Where is this place? Because you're in the city, so I'm intrigued.
I live in New York City. This winery is in Red Hook. It's in Brooklyn. It's all the way by the water where Brooklyn juts out. If you look at a map on Brooklyn, and they don't have a vineyard because New York City, Brooklyn, duh. So they actually buy all of their grape juice. Not unlike Yellowtail.
Or actually a bunch of wineries around the region. In the Finger Lakes, there are some wineries that only buy the juice, surprisingly.
No, of course. It's not a comment on the quality of the wine, unless you're talking about Yellowtail. But it is definitely a way to cut down on costs for wineries, and also to get to make different wines that they might not be able to make otherwise.
Intriguing.
Well, it's let's say you buy grapes that you can't grow in the region, then you can make that wine now. So, makes sense, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So, Julien, what
Yes?
media have you consumed in these short few days, and what did you drink this past week?
I tell you, since the last time we talked, which was on Saturday, if you didn't tune in that podcast, I watched it, and I also watched some Attack on Titan, but I won't belabor that point. I talked about that a lot in podcast episode 13. You should go check that out. But Yvonne, I played, as of last Saturday, I played a lot of Destiny, actually. And you watched me do it.
I did.
Because I stream on twitch.tv/jujubesgood. You can check me out there if you want on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. I stream Destiny. I have not played that game in over a month, I believe. And I'm itching for some more. No, it definitely wasn't, but I needed something to play. And oddly enough, or luckily enough, rather, the Iron Banner was going on, and I love Iron Banner. It is absolutely my favorite game mode that comes around once a month in Destiny. And it's basically a mode where all of the level advantages that you may have from leveling up throughout the game based on how long you've been playing and what type of gear you have and all the guns that you have, that all now comes into play in a PvP match. And the game type was actually Mayhem, which is the craziest of all, as the name suggests, the craziest of all game types in
it's the Joker's favorite game type.
Yes, pretty much. Basically, they reduce the cooldown time for all your abilities, including your super, and well, mayhem ensues, right? So, yeah, so that was a hell of a lot of fun. I actually had a really fun time on stream with all the boys coming through. You know how we do. Of course, girls are invited too if you want. But girls don't play video games. Am I right, Yvonne? Am I right?
Gamergate.
That was a joke. I'm sorry. It was a horrible joke. Girls play video games too. In fact, I'm a big fan of some girl gamers out there.
You could name all of them on 2 fingers.
Yeah, 2 fingers. Well, they're not. Well, actually, I don't watch that many streamers on Twitch, but there is Super Smash Bros. Player. I don't think she's a pro anymore, but her name's Milk Tea, and I was a big fan of her back in the day. She was super cool.
Milk Tea.
Milk Tea. She was Asian, so
makes
Milk
sense.
Tea. It's like boba tea. Yeah. Also, what have I been playing? I've been killing it in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Nintendo Switch. It came out, I believe, April 28th, and I've been playing it nonstop since then. And I've neglected to talk about it along with Puyo Puyo Tetris, which also came out. I just forgot to talk about it on the podcast when we do our segments because I had so many other things to say. And I didn't want to come up with too much to talk about in that one segment. But Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is super awesome for me because it's basically resetting the clock. I no longer have played Mario Kart 8 at all, apparently. And so basically I have to unlock everything again, which is unfortunate. But I mean, it gives me something to do on the train, so I play about 2 hours every day. No, I play about probably more like an hour every day because I only really have a chance to play it on the way back from work because I'm basically a sardine in a sardine can until I get to work on the train in the morning.
I was going to ask you how all of the people on the train felt about you swaying left and right as you're playing the game.
Oh, they try not to pay too much mind to anyone who exists because it is New York City. But also, I have encountered, I believe, 1 or 2 other people who had Switches on the train. And, of course, the only open seat was right next to them. This one time was actually very funny. I was already sitting down. I was playing Zelda. And this guy came on the train. He was already looking down. And there was only one open seat. It was right next to me. He sits down and he's playing a Switch. He's playing Zelda right next to me. And we both knew immediately as he sat down how awkward this was. So we didn't address each other, and we just kept on doing shrines.
That's exactly what those
Zelda.
Nintendo commercials were about, right?
Right, absolutely, totally. Actually, I remember seeing a Nintendo. I subscribed to Nintendo Power back when that was still a magazine.
Yeah.
Because I was a fucking nerd.
You got all those Nintendo demos, didn't you?
Best, yeah, there were some demos, but that was probably, that was a great magazine. Even though, if you really think about it, it was produced by Nintendo, by writers who were hired by Nintendo. So it wasn't much on the journalism side of things, but it was certainly a way to get Nintendo news in an era where downloading a video took a long-ass time. So I definitely love that magazine, but I remember there was an ad in the back where, because Nintendo was the first company to do the wireless controller, first-party wireless controller, that is, I think. Or they definitely put out the best one, the GameCube of that era of gaming. The GameCube wireless controller was definitely the best wireless controller of the PS2 and Xbox generation. But basically, it was called the Wavebird. Basically,
oh, right, yeah.
I had a lot. Basically, the controller, it was basically, now you can play without cords, and it was just a picture of a guy taking a crap, and he had the mirror of his, on the, what's it called, the bathroom door. The bathroom door mirror was reflecting the TV, and it was actually a very funny ad. What else have I been playing? Puyo Puyo Tetris. Actually, a fucking great game. Holy shit. I did not think it would be. I thought it was like, oh, do I really want to spend, I think it was $30 on Tetris again? and I just gave it a shot, and holy crap, that game is fun. So I don't know if you've heard about this game, Yvonne.
I haven't.
Puyo Puyo is another type of puzzle game, similar to Tetris in that you have to line up things. But Puyo Puyo is about lining up 4 of the same color, and they drop in segments of 2, so you'll get 2 of the same color or 2 different colors.
Oh, I've definitely played this game before.
Yeah,
or
you
this style
probably
game.
have. Yeah, it's a style of game. And basically you can chain many, if you're good at the game, you can line it up so that you put one last final piece down and then you clear the entire board. And that's how you get good at the game. But basically, there's Puyo Puyo Tetris is both of those games at once. So there's this mode called swap mode where every 30 seconds the game swaps. So you're playing Puyo Puyo for 30 seconds, then you're playing Tetris for 30 seconds, and it freezes the other board, except for the last piece that's falling. So the thing is, if you have set up your board and you're coming close to the timer, so you have maybe 5 seconds left, and your last piece is going to clear a lot of things, you can set it up so it falls down while you're playing Tetris, and it clears a bunch of, and gets you a combo, and then that can rack up, and you basically send garbage pieces to your opponents, and that pushes all of their pieces up or blocks their pieces so they can't really put anything down. So
I had never understood the point of competitive Tetris, to be honest.
It's fucking awesome. That's the point.
I know you love that. What was the Super Street Fighter Puzzle Quest 2?
Yeah.
Super Turbo?
I think it was Super Puzzle Quest. It was the Street Fighter version of Puzzle Quest. That game was really fun, but they got the audio mixing so horribly wrong. Or at least the PlayStation 3 emulation of it. It was so loud, and we would have the volume set on our TV, just the standard volume. You turn it on, and most games would not be too loud. But anytime I wanted to play that game, I had to get off my fat ass and lower the volume. So annoying. But that game was very fun as well. I can't remember. I guess I should play it again, but I can't remember. What type of puzzle game that was. But
it just reminded me of the same competitive kind of Tetris-y puzzle aspect game.
Right. No, it's a lot of fun. Also, the coolest thing in that game, I think, is that you can play online, obviously, which is great. But you can go on the leaderboards, and then you can upload your game. You can save your past game, right, and upload it. And the pros do that. And so you can watch pro Puyo Puyo players, basically the top of the leaderboard, top 5 leaderboard. They're all going to be crazy. And then also pro Tetris players. And also you can play Puyo Puyo versus Tetris. There are a bunch of different modes. I won't go into it.
That's super cool.
It's a fun game. It's actually a very, very awesome game. And on top of that, there's a story mode, which is nuts. There's like a crazy amount of characters in this game, and I don't really understand it, and I have no idea how they fucking added a story to this game, but they did, and I can't complain because it's basically one giant tutorial for the game.
Nice.
And it's really fun. It's actually very fun.
So what you're telling me is this Puyo Puyo Tetris game was a better value than Star Wars Battlefront and Nintendo Switch.
And the entire Nintendo Switch?
No, or 1-2 Switch.
I would say probably better value than 1-2 Switch. But unless you're in a party setting where 1-2 Switch will definitely thrive, I think. But if you just have 1-2 Switch and Puyo Puyo Tetris, I would prefer to play Puyo Puyo Tetris.
Boom, there you have it. There's our hot take.
IMHO, get Puyo Puyo. It's also cheaper. Yvonne.
Yo.
I didn't drink anything. Oh no, that's a lie. On Sunday, I actually went to the same winery that I'm going to with my mom a week after. And Nikki, my girlfriend, and I got a wine tasting, and we tasted a bunch of wines that are all very good. I suggest if you can find any Red Hook Winery wine that you pick it up, especially their Erebus Riesling. That was my favorite. We actually bought a bottle. It was really good.
Nice. I can segue straight into that because the thing that I drank this week was also wine.
Nice.
I still have half the bottle of Merlot that I opened
Still on that Merlot.
to drink while watching the Spurs game last night. And I have to say, $7 bottle of Bogle was better than this one because this one, it was just a nice label, and in the price range that I wanted, it was $11. So I'm trying to sample a bunch of different Merlots. I'm really trying to get into the Merlot game.
Cool. No, it's an admirable cause.
So I'm doing a lot of Merlot.
Have you cooked a steak with one yet?
I might with this stuff.
I think that is a good option for Merlot, personally.
And this one is, as my sister described it, in that weird middle stage where it's not great. So,
well, $7. What do you expect?
No, this was the $11 one. The Bogle one was $7 and it was
Still,
better.
$11. What do you expect? That's kind of cheap for a bottle of wine.
I mean,
we're not in
reasonable.
Europe, yeah, no, it's totally reasonable, but it's not. It's either going to blow your socks off, or it's just going to be all right. That's what you get when you spend $11 for wine.
We have a philosophical disagreement on this. I think that you can spend $11 and have a good wine, and
that's what I just said. It's either a good wine or it's just going to be all right. Blow your socks off?
Blow your socks off is like a top tier wine, I feel like.
I think you also have to factor in how much you paid for it. So, if it was
fair enough,
pretty good wine and you didn't pay that much for it, I think that equates to a very good wine and you paid a hell of a lot of money for it. It's just a bottle of wine.
It is just a bottle of wine.
Anyways, the philosophy of buying wine.
This is a much and oft debated topic, not only in my household, but in households around the world.
Yes, it's true. It's true. Maybe not so much in America, but
I think it's growing.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
Definitely. Because of California, I think, and New York.
Yeah, New York, we have a lot of good wine.
Yeah, definitely.
California obviously does too, but New York's coming out strong, especially some wineries in Red Hook, apparently.
Not Red Hook, New York. Red Hook, Brooklyn. Red Hook, New York exists.
It does. Bard College is near there, I think.
Yes, it is.
I've been there once in my life. In any case, media I've consumed has been mostly basketball, although there have been winding down. The Spurs won last night. Go Spurs, go. I've got my candle and my hat up today in loving memory of their victory.
What is their record with who are they playing again?
The Rockets. It's round 2. Spurs just went up 3-2. So now they're going to play in Houston on Saturday? Don't quote me on that. I'm not positive exactly. Cool. But it'll be sometime. Or maybe it's Thursday that they'll play next. I see. The danger being that the star player of the Spurs, Kawhi Leonard, got injured in this past game. So I would say, and this is what I've been listening to a lot of NBA podcasts and their analysis, is rest Kawhi for Game 6 and then play him in Game 7 when it's at home with a bigger chance of winning.
That sounds
because it'll give him a little bit of a break. Now, other than that, I have caught up on Season 4 of Silicon Valley.
Cool.
Really good show. Very humorous. And I watched 4 episodes while packing up my stuff because I'll be moving soon.
Oh, yeah, you are moving as well.
Yeah. Nice. So, cleaned out my desk and got some stuff straightened up and watched 4 episodes of Silicon Valley while doing that, because they're nice and short and humorous enough that...
They're 30 minutes, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Or 20 minutes.
I think they're 30 minutes because they're on HBO. They don't have the commercial stuff.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, that's what I've been doing this week.
Yeah, I also want to point out I watched some more Bill Nye Saves the World. I actually like the GMO episode.
I haven't gotten to that one because I couldn't finish it.
That one was alright. It's just a weird show, Ken. Definitely, if you were a fan of Bill Nye the Science Guy, this show is very different. But I also like that the past 2 episodes have had Derek Mueller in it. Mueller? Can't pronounce his last name. From Veritasium. He's one of my favorite science people on YouTube. And he's a correspondent on the show.
Oh.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a fun show. It's just a little weird. But I guess I wouldn't expect otherwise from Bill Nye. It's just not as good as I want it to be. That's for sure.
Yeah, it feels a little
underscripted.
A little underscripted and a little bit short.
And also,
it's weird that the Netflix series was designed to be that short when it cuts all of the segments about, like, it cuts the panel discussion about 5 to 10 minutes too short, and all of the interstitial gimmicks that he does are kind of, they're too childish for the adult crowd that he's aiming for. Which is weird.
Absolutely. I'm glad you think the same way. I didn't want to say it because I am actually a scientist, but yeah, that's I'm
a social scientist.
I mean, some of the things exactly, and and I mean, granted, your parents were chemists, but you still understand that these are like ridiculous. I mean,
yeah, the interstitial they're not that great, and
yeah.
Some of the experiments or whatever, they're cool and they're demonstrating some stuff that I'm guessing is not for our level of knowledge of science for the most part, because we have
absolutely.
I mean, you have a much more advanced knowledge of science than I do, but
yeah,
it's a little weird because it doesn't seem like the message is getting across on the right levels. Now,
I don't think so either. It's too. You're right. It's too rushed. He cuts off things too quickly.
Yeah. And they bring on some weird guests, too, to defend the opposing points.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they were talking about homeopathy, and they had the guy talking about acid and different drugs that can bring out the mind.
Yeah.
It was interesting in that was the opposition. But I guess you can't really find scientists that are super into homeopathy.
It's true.
You know where you could find people that were super into homeopathy?
Yvonne, is this a segue?
This is a segue.
Is this a segue?
You could find people that were super into homeopathy in old-fashioned Europe, or the Old West, or in France in 1970, which are different places where you could also place a video game, like Assassin's Creed. In the French Revolution.
Wow. Check that out. You're right, Yvonne. I believe we're moving over to the topic of the show. The topic of the show is, of course, where are video games going from here on out? Have they exhausted all of the possible avenues to go from, or are we just beginning, Yvonne? You tell me. Where do you want to start with the topic?
I want to start... Interestingly enough, I want to start with the newly announced Call of Duty. It's a big franchise.
Yes. Call of Duty World War II is, I believe, the name of the game.
Yeah, and I think they're definitely playing off of Battlefield 1 in terms of the naming aspect of it. And they're going back to the original roots. I guess it's the
roots of the game.
The executives over at COD.
Activision.
Are focusing back. I guess enough time has passed that they can rehash World War II.
Do you know they also own Blizzard? Or they have a segment of Blizzard?
Yeah, it was a weird, conjoining buyout thing. because it's Blizzard.
Activision Blizzard, yeah.
Yeah.
They run the multiplayer side of Blizzard, I believe.
Interesting.
If I'm not mistaken. I could be completely wrong about that. They run some aspect of Blizzard.
I have a cat trying to bust down the door into my room.
Cats have no place on a podcast.
That's what I'm saying.
They can't speak.
So what's interesting about the COD World War II thing is basically, as we've seen a lot of games slow down their iterations coming out every year. Things like Far Cry slow down. Things like Assassin's Creed has slowed down. COD has been one of the staples of the every year release.
Every year in November or October, that is when it comes out. I believe it usually comes out in October. This game, I don't believe, will change that pattern at all.
Yeah, and so because of the level of iteration, they have really started to run out of things that they want to talk about. So they did, the last iterations were Infinite Warfare,
right?
Which was a space and Earth futuristic one. There was Advanced Warfare.
Before that was Black Ops 3. Then there was before that was Advanced Warfare, and then before that was Ghosts, Call of Duty Ghosts. I believe.
And I have not played any of them.
I played Call of Duty Ghosts and Call of Duty Black Ops 3. They're all solid games, man. Call of Duty never really ceases to deliver a solid game. It's always just a good game. It's not necessarily, to me anyways, it's not like an amazing game by any means. I mean, it's just the same thing. But it's not like they screwed up the mechanics of the game, and the multiplayer is always solid, so I can't complain about the games.
The thing that I think that has surpassed them are some of the game mechanics that other games have introduced. For instance, I think Titanfall 2 is a much smoother version of the Infinite Warfare mechanics. Infinite Warfare is supposed to adapt some of those grappling mechanics, some of the movement mechanics, and make it a faster paced game. But what they've ended up is kind of a clunkier robot fighting another clunky robot.
Yes. So, I mean, I don't know. I haven't played Infinite Warfare, so I can't really comment on that game. But from what I heard, the multiplayer was pretty alright, and the single player, the campaign is fun. So I mean, I don't know. I always think Call of Duty delivers a pretty solid single player campaign, and if you get them for that, it's not really. If you get it, what's it called, on discount, I don't think it's a very bad decision. I think it's a good decision to get those games when they're sort of towards the end of the year, when the new game's revving up to be released, if you're just going for the single player. But I do understand that a lot of people don't even touch the single player.
Especially because the game mechanics feel so similar over and over. But it's interesting that they're going back to the World War II setting. Yeah. And after so many iterations of going into the future, they're taking a step back and going back into the past, but not even back to a place where, for instance, Battlefield went to with World War I, where they took a historical event which nobody thought would be possible to translate into a modern first-person shooter in terms of pace and different functionalities, and created a really unique game in the first-person shooter genre. And I think Battlefield 1 has won the current iteration of first-person shooters in that category. I think Overwatch is slightly different, but I think that Battlefield 1 was better than COD. It was more appreciated than Titanfall 2, for instance.
Well, I mean, you didn't play Infinite Warfare, but...
well, I've seen a lot of video footage and heard a lot of reviews that compared the two. And,
right. I mean, that should just be said.
Right. I said that I hadn't played Infinite Warfare.
Okay. But, I mean, I didn't play Infinite Warfare. I guess it wasn't received so well, but it was the best-selling game of the year. So that should say something.
Well, that also comes with the title of being a Call of Duty game, right? They've capitalized on the market. It's the same way that Madden is the game that's going to sell the most in terms of football, and 2K is going to sell the most in terms of basketball, despite there being some competitors out there.
Yeah.
It's a lot of market capitalization, and just because you sell the most doesn't mean that you have the most innovative or interesting games, right?
No, I know. That's true. Right. So I think I'm excited that they're sort of being forced into, in a sort of capitalist way, because your competition breeds more better products for the for the consumer. Anyways, so I think this is all good competition. Of course, Titanfall lost out. I doubt there's gonna be a Titanfall 3, unfortunately. But does that really matter, Vaughn? I think I'm actually really excited. I might get the new Call of Duty game. I have not seen any gameplay. I'm not sure if any was released at all, but I think it looks, from the trailer and from what they said about the gameplay, you're not going to have to... you don't have your health doesn't regenerate, so you need to find a medic. I think that's pretty cool. That's going to change up the gameplay a lot, especially in the single player, so you're not just going to come to a choke point, kill everything, then move on, and then do a set piece or whatever, crazy cutscene and shit like that. It's going to be way more methodical, I think. But I could be wrong, of course.
Give me 2 seconds here.
Okay.
Cat, I will fucking kill you. Jesus Christ.
Goddamn cats in the middle. Holy shit. That cat got, son.
I scared the crap out of him.
That cat got.
Okay.
But I mean, that's just Call of Duty, Yvonne.
Right, but
also,
that isn't even speaking to the setting of the game. That's more speaking to the changing of the mechanics, going back to the fact that Call of Duty produces an interesting game based on gameplay and mechanic, rather than really looking at the setting.
No, of course. But
is the storytelling really going to be that much more innovative by going back to World War II?
Well, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people are comparing it to Battlefield 1, and saying that, they're saying that I believe it's Sledgehammer is making this game. They have three studios making Call of Duty games now on 3-year rotations.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's...
I believe it's Sledgehammer.
Sledgehammer's for this one.
I could be wrong about that. So everyone's saying they copied, what's it called? EA, or who make DICE, going back to an older war. But that can't be true because they've been making that game for 3 years now. And when did Battlefield 1 get announced, right? So they had this idea 3 years ago. So it's just those two games got made at the same time, basically, in a vacuum, you could say. And we're completely separate from each other. And they both came to the same conclusion that the first-person shooter franchise, the military first-person shooter franchise, is becoming a little stale now, in that we've gone to the future, so now we know how to bring back the past, because we haven't had a World War II shooter, or a World War I shooter ever, but a World War II shooter in, I believe it's 10 years now, or 7 years now, or something, 8 years, something like that. So,
unless you count any of the sniper ones where you get to telescope zoom on how you kill people,
right?
Or Wolfenstein.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there are a bunch of first-person shooters that go back to World War II.
Yeah, but I think Wolfenstein is a little more... It's alternate universe. Alternate reality. Alternate historical path, basically saying Hitler won the war and going from there. But it does usually start, I think, at the end of World War. I don't know. I haven't played those games, so I can't make comment on it. But yeah, no, you're right. There are some games that touch on that genre, but the overwhelming majority of them have been more futuristic shooters, I think.
So I think the other thing that we can touch on in terms of game settings is that we're returning to made up or past wars that are kind of, the well has been used up a lot in terms of gaming avenues, but with speculation on Far Cry, for instance, Far Cry 5, which is going to be another dip into the open world realm of the Far Cry series. That's going more into what's speculated as into the Wild West because of the crews that have been spotted shooting promos in Montana, the same crews that were used for Far Cry Primal. And what I'd be interested in is, could you make a Call of Duty, for instance, in the Old West at the turn of the century? Something that Red Dead made really interesting. And could Call of Duty or another first-person shooter do it in the same style?
I don't see why not. I mean, I'm not a game developer. I think that would be pretty cool. I do like the West. I think it's a very aside from Red Dead, I can't think of many other games set in that setting. I think that's a really cool setting for a game, because you can have, well, I think Red Dead does it well, obviously, as you play as, I don't know, I didn't play that game, never mind. But my idea of it is that you play as like a bandit and you're, or sorry, you're aren't you a sheriff in that game?
You're, what is
needless to say, there are clearly bandits in that universe.
Yeah,
and that, I think it's a cool archetype in terms of characters that you can play as or play against, and there are crazy cool horse chases and things like that. I think that would be cool.
I think that it provides a level of difficulty in terms of developing a new style of gameplay, introducing new mechanics. For instance, they went into the future, but for like Battlefield 2142 went into the future. Not a super successful game, but
right.
it developed a few different things, and it tried to integrate the modern shooter mechanics into the future, but wasn't doing it as well as years later. I think that something like Crysis did, or something like Titanfall would do, I think, with bringing in the idea of the huge mechs to have their own unique sense of things, or different movement mechanics that could be integrated into a futuristic kind of thing. And then going back in time to Battlefield 1, I think that it's interesting to do that because you have whole different kinds of mechanics within the weapons availability, etc. But going back and doing the same kind of setting, we know what the weapons will be. Even if you're changing up the mechanics of the game, it's not as innovative as creating a mechanic that's designed for like reloading or shooting a rifle or a musket in Assassin's Creed 3, or developing how a bow and arrow versus a Gatling gun versus a 6-shooter pistol versus a Springfield would be in the Old West. There are so many more intriguing game mechanics that I think that can be explored by really trying to open up and develop these other kind of historical settings that I don't think games or game companies like the Activision is being really innovative by just kind of updating what a gun will look like, etc. And so I'm really excited for if Far Cry 5 gets put in the Old West or some kind of mechanic like that, because that will have a greater diversity in pushing the innovation envelope.
Right, but I guess my question is, why does someone like Treyarch have to do it, right? Why can't it be a different game company? I feel like you're wanting the Call of Duty guys to be making a completely different game than they're used to making, when for a lot of people it's just sort of comfort food. Maybe that's the one game they play every year, or same goes for Madden with EA. And it's just sort of, that's what they like to play. They're like the Call of Duty bros. That's what they like to play. So I think someone has to make that game for them. Obviously, it sells very well, so I don't see why they would stop making Call of Duty. It was the best-selling game last year, so or at least that's what I heard cursorily. So I know I just don't think the Call of Duty developers are the ones to do it. Even though if they did do it, it would make a huge splash in the gaming community, and maybe people would actually follow them. So I'm of two minds on the topic that you're bringing up.
But even if you look at year over year,
Yeah.
the Call of Duty sales, they've gone down tremendously.
Right, that's true.
I think that the company itself would want to innovate in a way so that they could have...
The publisher, you mean? Activision?
Yeah, Activision would want to innovate so that they could have some sort of interesting thing. Because I think the draw for Infinite Warfare was when I saw the trailer at E3, I was like, wow, I couldn't believe that was a Call of Duty game.
Right.
I thought that was like some sort of Titanfall clone or something like that. But then when the gameplay footage came out, it was the basic setup for all Call of Duties. It didn't look as cool as the trailer played up to be. And if they created something that was so intriguing, so powerful as that trailer, I would hope that they could develop a game that would be behind it. And even if they're packing up and selling, like Marvel produces a whole bunch of movies that I don't necessarily like all the time, and I'll skip a few, but they make tons and tons of movie. Or Fast and Furious produces shit films, but they make $500 million in the opening weekend or whatever. Like, yeah, sales are important, but they're not pushing a genre. They're not making it intriguing. And that trailer hit me so hard. I was astounded by how cool it was. And then getting to play Battlefield 1, I was astounded with the innovation that it took to develop it. And that's a very high-level publisher as well, right? DICE is a great gaming company, and they took a lot of time to develop something that was kind of unique.
Right. So I feel like you're mostly just focusing on the first-person shooter genre when you're right. There has been, aside from Battlefield 1 and I guess Titanfall, there haven't been many changes. There haven't been many changes recently. And then I would say Overwatch is a huge change to what first-person shooters can be in the multiplayer realm. But I feel like are those the majority of types of games you play, Yvonne?
Those are the majority types of games people play. Looking back on this list, you're right. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare is number 1.
Yeah.
Battlefield 1 number 2. Division is number 3. NBA and Madden 4 and 5. Grand Theft Auto, which is interesting, is still at 6.
That game came out in 2013.
13,
man. Yeah, it's still top 10 for 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Then Overwatch at 7, which is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah. Well, that game came out a year ago, so I don't. Top 10 selling game 2 years in a row. It's pretty good.
Well, this is for 2016.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, 1 year in a row, just for 1 year.
Blops 3 is at number 8. And FIFA is number 9, and number 10, Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah, I know that game sold surprisingly well, I think. And it actually, I guess comparatively, it came out in September of that year. So I don't know when they stopped counting the numbers, but because I'm not in the industry. But
again, this is also I should say that this is a Forbes list.
Right. Okay, that's a good point. Well, we're not here to talk about sales. We're here to talk about is there any innovation? So are you saying that there's no innovation in gaming anymore? Is it all stale, Yvonne?
I'm saying that these staunchly selling franchises some of them are really not innovating, and they're seeing their even if their sales are the top in the world, which is really upsetting. Because I personally haven't bought the last iteration of Call of Duty, for instance. I bought was Black Ops 2,
Right, okay.
which I thought actually was a really cool game.
Yeah, it's a fun game.
And I thought that was
Call of Duty is fun.
Yeah, but I'm more intrigued with the direction of places like Far Cry are going, or because Far Cry Primal I thought was a pretty cool take on changing the genre. I thought Horizon Zero Dawn was the best kind of return to Earth in the future game that I'd seen in a while. Again, game mechanics etc. made that game stand out for me too. But I think
So are we talking about genres of games, or are we just saying settings for games?
you know, I'm looking into settings for games and how that affects storytelling,
Okay,
how
you wanna talk
that
about
changes
settings for games. Okay.
how that changes storytelling, game mechanics, and how the constrictions of a game setting really can affect the way that the game is translated.
I feel like you're not playing enough indie games then. Because there are a hell of a lot of games out there, developers that aren't being tied down by the man, and they're free to create what they want, man. Particularly a game you'd like is What Remains of Edith Finch. I think that's the name of the game. They made The Unfinished Swan, the developers, Giant Sparrow. They made a new game. I don't know if it's out yet, but it's basically it's I think it's a first-person game. I haven't seen gameplay of it, but it's a very unique way of telling a story. I think you should check it out. Basically, I think you play this girl and you figure out how you solve a mystery of how a bunch of people died, and I think it's your family, if I'm not mistaken. I wasn't really listening to the podcast, so I was talking about it. But I think that's a game you should check out. Also, did you play Gone Home?
I own both of them. I've played about 10 minutes of Gone Home, and I haven't touched What Remains of Edith Finch. But The Unfinished Swan, I've finished multiple times.
Right, exactly. And you think that game was very innovative, correct? Right. So
I love The Unfinished. I
Yeah,
think The
it's a great
Unfinished
game.
Swan is an excellent game to bring in non-gamers into the gaming world and show them what an indie game can be.
And I'm just saying these games are being made all the time, and it's just they might be a little harder to find because they're not the best-selling games of the year.
But also,
there are
game
a lot of
mechanically,
indie games
they tend to be a lot more simple.
Right. So is that a problem? Does that matter? As long as it's telling the story that the developer wants to get across. You're talking about storytelling in games, right? So
Right, yeah.
It doesn't have to be the most complex thing in the world. It doesn't have to be a fighting game with different ultimates and things like that. But I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
I get you, and I
Right.
greatly appreciate the amount of interesting scenarios that indie games are bringing to the table, and that but to me it's interesting that AAA titles are becoming, or aren't becoming, but AAA titles. Well, no, I'm going to say this. AAA titles for a lot of the part are becoming super repetitive, and I don't know that was the same always. I feel like because of the updated dev cycle
Yeah.
for pushing things out, like Activision having 3 studios to develop Call of Duty, or Ubisoft having multiple studios working on things like Assassin's Creed. Like those have shortened the kind of the dev cycle for putting games out in terms of iterations of games.
Right.
I think they stifle creativity a lot more than an indie game will develop it.
Right. I mean, I agree with you. There are a lot of, I guess you could boil a lot of things down like, well, this is just the same game as that, or you could say. And also, you could say Nintendo's making the same game over and over again, but I don't think that's really true. Nintendo in particular is definitely not true. I think they change. You could say, well, why are they making another Mario game? Well, it's one, it's been a long time, but two, they're all incredibly. All the Mario games are just completely different from each other, whether you like it or not. I think. I mean, Mario 1 is absolutely completely different from Mario 2, and then there was Mario 3, which was sort of a return to form, but it was, and surprisingly, still on the NES as well. If you look at Super Mario Bros. 3 and compare it to Super Mario Bros. 1, those two games look like day and night to me, anyways. And they're very, I think they're very different games. There are a lot of mechanics that they introduced in Mario 3, but
there's also, but I mean that's true. And then you have the innovations of things like Paper Mario or Mario Sunshine, and they're changing the game mechanics. They're changing even though there's like this look and feel of the world that feels the same.
Right, it's Mario.
It's changing the setting a lot, and in terms of what is actually happening in the world, even if you have the same kind of tropes and mechanics. But that's also part of what Nintendo's shtick is, right? You have the same trope in pretty much every game, like Link and Zelda and Ganon.
Story. Yeah.
But they change, like, even the scope of the new Legend of Zelda game is an intense change to how that game feels.
Mm-hmm. And then if you're watching the YouTube video, we have a lot of Metal Gear playing in the background. All those games are absolutely completely different. But I sort of see we're coming. You're basically trying to say most games are converging to one point, right? Or gameplay wise and even aesthetic wise, everything's sort of wet and dark and post-apocalyptic in some cases, and then even Metal Gear Solid right now. Metal Gear Solid 5 Snake is covered in blood and everything's blowing up. But yeah, so
that's why it was refreshing to have like Overwatch, where it's stepping away from the grittiness of a first-person shooter and trying to develop something else. And another reason that I really liked the vignettes of Battlefield. The single player in Battlefield is exceedingly cool because of the different little vignettes that you get, and it's teaching you basic mechanics, but it's also doing it in a way that there are some lighthearted moments, and I feel like you don't get those a lot in a lot of these first-person shooter games. It's a lot of grit and dying and death, and let's throw a twist where the main character is going to get killed.
Well, we'll see. I think the minority of gamers probably have voiced their opinion, and it sounds like to me, we'll see with E3, of course. Tune in to our E3 prediction podcast. Probably, is that next week that we're recording that, or 2 weeks from now? We're gonna record that soon. We're trying to record it as late as possible so we don't miss anything that just gets leaked or something. But I mean, it seems to me, I guess you have a different opinion on this, but it seems to me that the developers are listening. In that, I mean, Battlefield 1 came out, right? That's a completely different game that you've quoted many times in this podcast, right? Because it's a really good game, right? It's doing something different, and it sold very well because of that. I mean, I think that's the positive reinforcement that EA needs to just say, give it a go and, do more things like this, DICE. And then you'll see, I guess, Horizon Zero Dawn sold incredibly well. We're definitely going to get a sequel to that game, and I can't wait for that, even though I haven't beaten it yet. And then Resident Evil 7 sold incredibly well, I hope. And that was a not only sort of a return to form for the game, but a completely different game series, that is, but a completely different outtake on it because it was in first person. They completely changed the game, yet they somehow still made it feel like a Resident Evil game, which was amazing. I applaud them for doing that. That was a really great game. And then, I mean, you see, and then Final Fantasy 15, say what you will about it, it was a completely different gameplay style in that game and setting as well. The story was confusing as fuck, but that's Final Fantasy. But we don't need to talk about confusing stories because Metal Gear is probably the most confusing of stories. And Metal Gear Solid 5 didn't really have a story, which is the problem. But it was a really great game.
Still haven't gone through and played it, despite me loving Metal Gear Solid 4.
Metal Gear Solid 5 is such a fun game to play, but the story sort of just ends like halfway through. But you can sort of get the vibes of what was going on at Konami at that time and why that happened. I don't think that story will ever be told. I hope it is. About Kojima leaving, that is. Or getting fired. I think he was fired. I don't know. The point is, when I look at the gaming ecosystem right now, I see a lot of innovation going on, Yvonne. So I am not entirely sure. While I agree that if you take, I mean, and I'm talking currently in 2017, that is, I agree that if you looked at the gaming ecosystem probably around like mid 2016 before Battlefield 1 came out, I would totally agree with you. I would say, oh, it's just another Call of Duty, it's just another this, it's just another that. It's all the same, very similar games. And that was becoming a problem. And then now this first quarter of 2017 was absolutely amazing for gaming. And I thought about pretty much all the games that came out were not only sequels, except for Horizon Zero Dawn and Neo, but they were all really innovative in that game series. So I'm not entirely sure where you're coming from on that, but that's just my opinion.
No, that's fair. I think that this has been a much better year for gaming. I think the imagination of things like even For Honor has been interesting.
Right, For Honor was a new franchise, right? And I mean, there's been some controversy with that game over the online, how it plays online. I think I forgot. I watched a video about what they were gonna boycott playing the game for a day or something, and I think they did. The community of the game.
I think they actually got some stuff to change based on that.
Yeah, no, and Ubisoft listened, and then The Division was another sort of controversial game, but it was a new franchise, and it was, to its credit, I think it was doing something pretty unique with the New York City and the setting of the game. And not many games take place in New York City, to my knowledge. Except
True Crime New York.
Games. True Crime New York,
or
but not in a post-apocalyptic New York. I wouldn't say.
What about what's that? The one where you can prototype.
Oh right, I guess that's true.
Boo!
But I mean, just because there was one, it doesn't mean it's burned out, right?
No. I think that's true. I think see. Listen, I'm not saying that my opinion is the end all be all. I have a lot of feelings, obviously, about the Call of Duty franchise, but it is exciting to see the amount of cool scenarios that are being played out in different other AAA titles. Like, I think For Honor was actually a pretty cool innovation of three things coming into one. Battlefield 1 was interesting, although the Battlefield franchise has had a lot of... they have had a history of trying to do something a little different, at least with their past few iterations. With Cops and Robbers, and then
Battlefield 4.
Yeah,
I think that was the one before it.
So I think that there's that, but I think that we also keep running against this wall of development of innovation in terms of even within the setting. So Mass Effect Andromeda. I looked onto the Reddits. I went to the Reddit, and I was looking at Mass Effect Andromeda, and everybody's in love with the Milky Way galaxy setting, and everybody really disliked the Mass Effect Andromeda setting. And I thought that was curious because they're trying to build this series into a new space, but because it doesn't have the intricacies of the Milky Way galaxy, they didn't like it as much. And
or
I saw
the familiarities, because, well, we live here, right?
Yeah.
In the Milky Way galaxy. Yeah.
Or do we live in a computer simulation?
Jupiter and oh my god, and Mars and things like that. Couldn't you in Mass Effect 2?
Yeah, you could go to the
moon. I remember there were lunar missions.
I think
weren't there?
in Mass Effect 3 there were lunar missions.
Oh, it was Mass Effect 3. Sorry.
It was either Mass Effect or Mass Effect 3.
The thing is, they're all the same story, right?
Right, they're all based in the Milky Way. But I think the thing that they were talking about most in these comments was just the level of world building and storytelling that existed in Mass Effect. And if Mass Effect had been told in Andromeda Galaxy to begin with all these intriguing things, like take humans out and put another word for humans, like call the humans Protheans instead, and then make the Protheans a different, like the Ket or the Angara that exist there, they would want to return to that universe. It's just the level of setting that was included there. And then taking that franchise out of that setting and placing it in a different setting, they really butted heads against that, which makes me a little annoyed because they were trying to do something different. And even if it developed into very tropey First Contact things, it was attempting to take the thing into a new direction. And I see Mass Effect Andromeda very analogous to Mass Effect 1 in terms of it's a good game at its core that had really big bugs.
Right.
And I'm really hoping
definitely.
that they do something like Orson Scott Card did with his second trilogy in the Ender series, or the next part of the Ender series, where now that they've gone into this next universe, we can have generation skips and large bits, and the next iteration of the Mass Effect Andromeda Galaxy will be a way more complicated civilization and design and way larger scale interaction between multiple species that have, for instance, interacted with the main enemy of Mass Effect Andromeda.
And hopefully they have more time to develop the game as well.
And they'll have more knowledge of what the Frostbite engine does, etc. So yeah, there are a lot of innovations in terms of how game settings can change it. I think Overwatch, For Honor, Battlefield 1 have changed it. I'm a little skeptical about things like dipping back into the World War II pool and how that's going to affect, for instance, if that game sells well again, are we going to have just a bunch of World War II clone iterations that follow after that? But you have made a good point, and you have convinced me that this will be a better year for gaming than it has been recently.
It's already been amazing, by the way, and not to mention, I believe, let's see, of the games coming out in the what was it? Assassin's Creed was just leaked, like a screenshot of the game or something like that. So the setting they've been dormant for a year and a half now.
Except for the movie.
Oh yeah, except for the movie. Well, we don't need to talk about video games. That's actually another topic. Video gaming movies. Tell us in the comment section below. Tweet at us if you want us to talk about that. If you think we have valid opinions about video games. If you think we're idiots and all that stuff. But yeah, we'd love to
ancient Egypt.
What you guys think about video games. So be on the social medias. Contact us. We'd love to talk to you guys. But yeah, right. It's in Egypt, I believe. Or so if the leaked photo thing.
Earlier today, a now deleted Reddit account posted the image above to Assassin's Creed subreddit, and it looks like a ancient Egyptian.
Was that Reddit account based in Montreal? Because that's how Assassin's Creed games always get leaked. Some person in Canada just was working on the game at an airport, had the laptop open, and someone just took a picture of it.
It looks like it's a monitor as opposed to a laptop.
Right, okay, so never mind. I was just joking. But, right, so it seems like they're going to be doing something interesting with the Assassin's Creed universe. Hopefully they don't deal too much with the Animus. I don't know if that many people like that part of the game. I don't know about you. Do you like that part of the game?
No.
Real world part of the game. I mean, I never really liked Assassin's Creed to begin with, but
it's very meta and in itself. Like,
Abstergo
owns Ubisoft in the world.
Oh, whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's weird.
But yeah, I mean, that's it. I believe the general consensus is that it looks, from one screenshot, it looks pretty different from general settings from Assassin's Creed games, and so that's something to look forward in the future. And then Super Mario Odyssey. Mario is in motherfucking New York City.
I'm super excited for that.
Excited for that game. Let's see. In the future, yeah, I mean, those are just two examples, and I can't really think of many more.
I want to see Far Cry in the Wild Wild West.
Right, exactly. We talked about you talked about Far Cry.
Well, it's another one of my pet series. I love Far Cry. I realize it's a AAA title or whatever, but I love it.
It's awesome. It's a fun game. And then I believe who knows what they're going to do with VR. I think that's something we're going to delve into in the E3 predictions podcast, particularly when we talk about Sony. I think they have to do a lot with VR if they want it to be a thing.
Yeah, I'm just afraid that it's not going to be, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. And then I think the rest of the year looks pretty promising. I still have a backlog of literally all the games that came out in the first quarter of the year, so I'm totally happy just playing those games for the rest of the year. I have about 5 games that I...
You finished Resident Evil 7, though.
I did beat Resident Evil 7 because I love Resident Evil that much, and I love getting scared by spooky things. So that game was really awesome. I intend to go back and beat Horizon, Mass Effect. So I'm still working on Persona because that's my primary goal right now because I love Persona. And I still have to beat Zelda. I'm right at Ganon. I'm still just finishing up some last things I want to do in that game. And then, but yeah, so far it's been a pretty fun year for gaming. I still love Overwatch. I will still play that game. And then... what else is coming out? Let me think.
I just have to say that maybe the Hungover podcast people will enjoy us playing the Spookums because I'm going to force us to sit down in a dark room and play Outlast 2 together.
Outlast 2, right. Maybe we should... Are there any spooky games coming out during Halloween time?
Oh, I'm sure.
All right, well, we'll play
We'll time it out. Actually, if we time it out based on how our recording schedule is looking for the next few months, we won't get to Outlast 2 until around September.
So good timing. That's fine with us.
So we'll work it out.
Be on the lookout for that. Tell us in the comments section below, on Twitter, on apparently we have a Facebook page now, Yvonne. Did you ever make that?
Yeah. It'll be
sure.
The Facebook
by
page
Sunday,
will be up by the time this podcast
by the time
comes
this
out.
airs. Okay, we have a Facebook page. Go check us out at facebook.com/groups/hungovergaming.
We'll figure it out.
URL. I'm guessing that's the URL.
The URL will be in the description below.
Yes, definitely. I made that URL up, but you got it. Check us out there. We'd love to talk to you there. We will be checking in that periodically and such. Yvonne, any final thoughts? Did we come to a conclusion? I feel like we should come to a conclusion here because we sort of just talked about it. What's the point of a podcast if there's no conclusion?
The conclusion is AAA titles need to get their shit together and have better stories and take a lot more from indie games that you have been suggesting.
Yes, there are a lot of indie games out there, and I only named a few. I wish I had enough time to play them. They're all doing an awesome job, and I'm excited to see what the future holds. I think that the AAA developers have gotten the picture. I think gamers have complained enough about the monotony that has arisen in video gaming, and I think that we'll see some changes this year, in fact. And I'm excited to see what the future holds with E3. So be on the lookout for the E3 podcast. Yvonne, thank you so much for voicing your opinion. You can voice your opinion at us. Yes, opinionate yourself at Twitter, on Twitter, and of course the Facebook group. We already went over that. Yvonne, we always end the podcast now with a segment in a song, in a segment called Hungover Radio. So welcome to Hungover Radio. Yvonne, this is a segment where you, the viewer or listener, can submit your music or your friend's music or whoever's music you want. Preferably it's a video game song. But, of course, if you wrote it yourself, we are always willing to listen. And I would be super excited. We did get no submissions this week, unfortunately. So sad. But, Yvonne, you turned me on to this new rapper. Or he's not a new rapper, but he is a rapper.
A new rapper for you.
New rapper for me. What a surprise.
Out of San Antonio, bro. He's a San Antonio.
San Antonio. My fault. His name is Richie Branson. We're giving him free advertisement for some reason, but he doesn't need it. He already has 14K followers on Twitter. I really like his music. He raps about things like from the 90s that I am particularly nostalgic for. If you are nostalgic for the 90s, go check out our 90s Nostalgia podcast. It was the last episode 13. But yeah, Richie Branson. Follow him on Twitter at Richie Branson. The song today is called Bring Back Toonami. A song about all the anime that we grew up watching as kids.
Absolutely.
So, and how it needs to come back, but apparently it already came back. But this song is really dope. You showed it to me last night, and I was really fucking hyped. So we're playing it in this podcast. Thanks so much for suggesting it, Yvonne. And I'm Julien.
And that's Yvonne.
And we're Hungover Gaming, so we'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.
Bye.